All right. Well, Santino, I really want to say thank you for giving me your time today. It's been a crazy year for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I'm just glad to be a little freed up to be able to jump on with you and catch up and hear what all you've been up to. It seems like you've been really busy as well, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we've been busy. We have the new show, Calls from Beyond, so that's doing really
Hmm.
well. That's gonna soon be twice weekly. Was once weekly.
Okay.
Um, but whenever you're in Vegas again, we'll have to get you on the show. I know I'm trying to at least this year at some point. I'm trying to get down to see Immortal Masks.
Yeah, yeah, please do.
And then do like a tour and a walkthrough, and then talk with you guys about everything you guys do there. But
Hmm.
for today's video, really, I wanted to really dive into the Robert Eggers Nosferatu film, which, by the
Yeah.
way, was my first Robert Eggers film.
Oh, okay.
As
Wow.
of last night, I've seen three out of the four now. I just watched The Witch last night. I
Okay.
saw The Lighthouse the other night, so I think we're gonna watch The Northman tonight or tomorrow.
I still haven't seen The Northman. I've heard really good things. That's the one I haven't seen yet, though, as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, you know me. I do paranormal investigations. I
Hmm.
literally have a video of me going out and looking for Bigfoot.
Right.
I was terrified in this movie. I can't do jump scares. I don't know what it is. And I
Hmm.
was with my girlfriend, and she's a horror fanatic, so she's unfit. She told me that for every jump scare, which apparently there weren't a lot, but I felt like
Hmm.
there were a lot.
Hmm.
Um, she said, we're in the back of the theater, and I'm sitting there tensed, like tensing up, and like I can tell when
Yeah.
it's about to come, and it still gets me every time.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
guess I need to work on that.
listen, that's Eggers because you are in the hands of like a genius. He knows the genre so well and he knows how to do the most subtle things to get under your skin. So that's just a testament to him and the genius that he is.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we all know, or at least most of us know, about the 1922 version of Nosferatu, which
True.
was and I guess most of us are seeing the bootleg version
Right. Yeah.
because it was, yeah, Bram Stoker's wife
Unauthorized.
was like, I don't want this, which I get. I totally get
Mhm.
that. But I'm glad that it survived because we got this
Yeah.
amazing movie that just came out. So let's jump to the 1922 version. What makes that
Mhm.
original Nosferatu or Count Orlok so scary to look at?
That's a great question because to me, I think it is one of the most striking makeups ever put on film. And again, for the time, I mean, arguably, it's not the first horror movie. A lot of people will say Dr. Caligari. A lot of people will say Nosferatu. Really, the first horror movie was 1910 Frankenstein. However, for the first vampire film, um, it literally sets the standard for what um, the Hollywood version of a vampire is, and we could talk more about Eggers' approach and what he did later down the line, but that was the first time anybody had ever said, okay, so what does a vampire look like? Let's throw him on screen. And Max Schreck, from what I understand, the actor that played Orlok, was a very strange guy. If you've ever seen Shadow of a Vampire with Willem Dafoe, although it is a exaggerated performance of what that behind the scenes process was like, from what I've understood over the years, he's just as creepy offset as he is on the screen. He stayed in character, but to me, design wise, it's just his silhouette. Immediately, it's iconic. He's slender. He has this odd shaped head. The two teeth that kind of jut out of his lip it was again the first time that we'd ever seen this kind of imagery. And I mean, arguably the most iconic shot of him in the doorway, which SpongeBob famously ripped off with the
Yep.
the lights. But that's like, to me, it's that one shot that's like, that image will stand the test of time. It just will, because there's something about it. I don't know what the secret sauce to it was. It just, you had a brilliant actor who knew how to convey so much with no dialogue and deliver a performance that, like, again, nobody had ever seen anything like that before. So I think that that's why it really just burned into the zeitgeist of the human consciousness, is because we'd never seen anything like it.
Definitely, definitely. So, I mean, at this point, the video that I just recently did is out, so people are seeing it. I talked a lot about how he's just creepy. All like he did. Horror villains now are very swift and quick
Yeah.
and very jumpy, as opposed to like you watch the movie, he kind of just like looking back on it now, it's kind of
Hmm.
funny. Like it's like he's just
Hmm.
he's in his bag right now. He's gonna walk around however slow he wants to. But
Hmm.
in comparison to the Max Shrek version, what makes or let me rephrase that. So in comparison to the Max Shrek version, why is the Bill Skarsgård version so terrifying?
Well, I mean, obviously, the advent of just the technology has changed so much, but I think that really what makes Bill's performance so haunting is his voice. The work that he did with, I believe, opera singers, he had
Yeah.
taken courses and classes to lower his register. To me, when I first heard the voice, because I got to see the film at an advanced screening, thanks to a really dear friend, John Vasey, who is a editing professor at Chapman University. Surprisingly, grew up in Haddonfield, New Jersey, with a wonderful woman by the name of Deborah Hill, who you might know went on to produce Halloween and all of those famous John Carpenter films. So John has a really rich history and knowledge of horror cinema in particular, as well as just cinema in general. And he took me to go see this advanced screening before Christmas of the film. And the minute that Bill was on screen and his voice echoed through those speakers, I went, "Oh, you got me. I'm in because it wasn't what I would have done." And again, we could talk a lot about this as we kind of get into the weeds of Bill's design and Egger's approach to that film. I had a very different expectation. I had something built up in my head from things I had heard through the grapevine and of what to expect, and it wasn't that. So for me, on the first watch, I went, "Oh, okay, we're going there. That's exciting because now I had no expectations. Everything went out the window the minute he got on screen." But that, of course, I think is the big thing. But really, also just, I mean, again, I have opinions about the makeup design, but still, execution wise, of those prosthetic appliances were very very well done,
See,
very
that's a
very
thing.
beautiful.
I've talked to other people, like our mutual friend Franny, who helps produce the show.
Hmm.
Him, as well as other people in your field, they all say the same thing. Where they don't necessarily agree with the choice, but the
Yeah,
execution was masterful.
it was absolutely it was, and I'm unfortunately I should have maybe done my research a little more. I'm ignorant to who designed that makeup, but
I
really
think it
hats
was
off to
David
them.
White.
David White, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, again, Egger's approach, from what I have understood from his interviews and stuff, was to really go back to the lore of what vampires were known to be back when people believed that they truly existed, and that they were these putrefied walking diseases, Um, a very interesting take. Not something that I would have initially done. But I thought, oh wow, that's a really interesting creative choice that I just didn't see coming. I will say with Bill, the only thing that I was really kind of taken aback by was the fact that when you are thinking of Nosferatu, you have a very specific image in your head based on the other versions that we've seen. The Max Schreck version, Willem Dafoe's version, Klaus Kinski's version, they all kind of have a similar vibe and look to them. They stayed very traditional. Um, and when I heard Bill's casting as Orlok, I went, "Oh my God, you can't pick a guy with a better face to play that vampire." That said, the makeup was so transformative, I lost Bill completely.
yeah,
I didn't see Bill Skarsgård at
no,
all. And to some people, that's probably awesome. And that probably really enhanced the experience and made it more scary for them. For me, I wish I would have seen a little bit more Bill in the makeup, maybe done a little less. But that said, what a transformation. Literally, he is unrecognizable from head to toe.
yeah. I mean, for for me, like I had seen the 1922 version beforehand going into it.
Hmm.
Um, didn't really know what to expect.
Hmm.
I figured it was probably just going to be a retelling, but for me, like his performance, I mean, the thing was is I had to like rewatch a lot of scenes because
Hmm.
as I hinted at at the beginning, I was on edge the entire time just because
Yeah, right.
the first jump scare, I was still sitting down, like I was still like settling in,
Hmm.
and I jumped.
Right.
Like, and I think it was done so well. And I think for me, I think that is what really set the tone for the film is like, oh, this is
Mhm.
a dark film. This isn't going to
Yeah,
be, and I guess with Eggers, like that's kind of
his
expected
vibe.
now, especially now that I've
Yeah.
seen like The Witch last night, which is still fresh on my mind, which
Hmm.
I mean, sure there are a lot, but there's only two directors now that I think of that hit a home run on their first directorial debut, and that's Zack
Right.
Snyder with Dawn of the Dead remake,
Hmm.
and then that's Eggers with
Eggers.
The Witch.
I agree. To me, the Witch is actually just one of my favorite films in general. You know, I'm so fascinated with Salem and witchcraft and all of that lore and mythology. So the thing that I appreciate the most about Eggers as a director is kid does his research. I
Oh,
mean,
for sure.
he knows everything from top to bottom. The just the dialogue within The Witch to be able to capture that old English in such a um like intellectual, honest, true way, you could tell he really did his due diligence. And that is the sign of a brilliant director.
Definitely. So, what do you think, in your opinion, makes for a good horror creature or villain, especially in the terms of somebody like Count Orlok, where the original version and the new version, it's still
Mm-hmm.
terrifying just in their own ways?
Well, for me, what I as a writer and then also a designer of the makeups and the creatures, there's two different things that I look for when I'm looking at the villains, and that's that there's some sense of humanity to that character that I can resonate on a deep personal emotional level with the character. I think that that to me, for some reason, and maybe other people have different opinions of this, but that is always more scarier to me than the unknown because the unknown is unexplainable. But when you can understand the methodical nature of your villain, that's something to fear because you're conflicted. You know, that in their story, they're their own hero. So everything that they're doing is being filtered through the lens of this is what I have to do. And when you have a mission, that's terrifying, you know, as opposed to just chaos that is just chaos for the sake of chaos. Um, so, from the writing aspect of Orlok, or just any villain in general, yeah, I don't necessarily need to know all of their history and all of their backstory, but there needs to be some nugget of it that I can go, ooh, that could really happen. That's a real thing. That's a being that exists in this universe that has its own wants, its own needs, its own passions, and it will unrelentingly stop at nothing to get it. That's scary to me. Now, from a design standpoint, it's a little more nuanced and a little harder to explain, but for me, I look for iconography. I want a design to stand the test of time, and I want to unmistakably know when I see an image, that's who that is. You know, for instance, Karloff's Frankenstein. It is ingrained in pop culture. You will never not know who Frankenstein is when you see that image of Karloff, ever. That will exist until the end of time. It's timeless. Same thing applies with the Max Schreck Nosferatu. Same thing applies with Freddy Krueger. I mean, there's something about a villain that has such a distinctive look that it is unmistakable. Whereas if you have a villain like, and I'm not taking anything away, for instance, you know, Michael Myers and Jason are both very distinctive in their own rights. And they have an iconic look that obviously stands the test of time, but they're a little bit more devoid of a character. It's just a blank slate that you can kind of project your own thing onto. Um, that's where it kind of goes hand in hand with the writing, where it's like the design is iconic, the design is undeniably recognizable from the moment that you see it, but then also this character makes sense to me. I can actually understand it. Um, so that's what I look for. Everybody's going to have their different takes on that, but that's where I come from as a creator.
So, I have a question for you in the sense of, let's say Eggers wrote Nosferatu, but it wasn't Nosferatu. It didn't have that IP already attached to it. Do
Mm-hmm.
you think it would get higher praise because it wasn't already living in the shadow of what we think Nosferatu is?
That's a very interesting question. To be honest with you, I think yes, I think it could have maybe done more, but I think only if he would have chosen to free himself up from the source material a bit. For me, what my qualm about the film was, and I don't have many because again, from a technical standpoint, it's gorgeous, it's well shot. Every performance from top to bottom is impeccable. It is a very, very, very clear vision that he had. Cannot take that away from him. That said, if you know the Nosferatu story, if you know the Dracula mythos, it doesn't do a whole lot new. It kind of treads the same story that we've seen in every other iteration, just fleshes it out with his own sensibilities and styles about it. I agree, though, that that's where I think held it back. I think if he would have taken some liberties and not felt so compelled to stick to the source material, it might have had the ability to step into what I consider to be iconic territory. Whereas I think with Eggers, although it's a beautiful, well made, amazing, scary film, I don't think people are going to talk about it in the same way that we talk about the 1922 film, even still today. It just didn't have anything new enough to lock in to its own zeitgeist. It will always live as this is a version of this. And that's unfortunately that is the curse of Hollywood and the money making machine of it is a slam dunk no matter what because the IP is recognizable and you can get butts in the seats. You don't have to work as hard to get people to go, oh, it's Nosferatu. You know, there's already that built in expectation. So, from a business standpoint, all that makes sense. And you don't want to stray too far from the source material where you piss off fans. But I would have been more interested in what Eggers would have done had he say, I'm going to take the very basic premise of Count Orlok longing for love, wanting connection, and will stop at nothing to get it, and then just let him do something completely new. I think personally it would have resonated better for me, but that's just from, again, one person's opinion. I've heard nothing but praise about the film in general, so I haven't really heard much negative other than maybe the mustache, which I
Which
think
like is
everybody's
such a
on board.
smooth brain complaint in my opinion. Like
It
if that's all
is.
you took away from that movie, like I
Right.
don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think Eggers maybe went backwards, whereas like, Zack Snyder, for example, did a remake and then started just doing a bunch of his own things. Where Eggers had three, I would argue, granted, I haven't seen the third one yet, but I've heard really good things about it, even though it didn't really
Mhm.
get the praise it needed in theaters. But I heard once it went to video, like everyone was like, oh, this is amazing. But it
Yeah.
sounds like he hit three home runs right off the bat. And nobody, I don't think anybody sensible is saying that Nosferatu is a bad film. I think it, like I
No.
said, I think it just falls because it's under the shadow of
Hmm.
no of the 1922 version and even the subsequent versions since then.
Hmm.
I think it would be like if somebody tried to make like a almost a one for one remake of the 1992
Right.
Dracula with Gary Oldman. I think
Hmm.
people would. I mean, it'd probably be a really good film and really well shot, but then people would be like, nah, but
Well, and it's funny that you brought up the Gary Oldman Dracula because I think that is a perfect a perfect tie to it because theoretically the story beats are almost the exact same.
right.
However, where I think again Coppola kind of maybe took one step in excel over Eggers on that was twofold. One, Francis chose to focus on Dracula from a very, very, very heavily character based perspective. You felt in every single scene, regardless whether he's sacrificing a baby, feeding on Keanu Reeves, or seducing Lucy or Winona Ryder's character. I forget her name in
I
the
forgot. I
film.
blanked too,
Yeah,
and I'm
but
currently reading the book too, so like I
yeah,
shouldn't have blanked.
And again, and I'm sure you reading the novel as well, you're also seeing like, oh, the novel's a little more fleshed out, obviously, and a lot
Right.
bigger, but you're still hitting the same beats.
Even with Nosferatu, like I started reading it the when we got home from well, not really when we got
Mm-hmm.
home because we saw almost a midnight screening of it on Christmas. But
Mm-hmm.
the next day I started reading it, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess Nosferatu has just more before this exact moment, but it's like this is I
It's the same.
yeah,
Yep.
I remember this exact moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that again, that's where I say story wise, I would like to see directors, even if they're gonna do a remake, give me your version of it and don't feel obligated to tread the path that's already been tread. Because again, to me, as a film goer and as a fan, excuse me, um, I would pick Coppola's Dracula over Nosferatu because again, we focus so heavily on who Dracula is, and you really do feel and sense his longing and his lusting, and it makes you immediately feel more like you have stakes in it now
Yeah.
because you understand the man. He's evil and he's doing these horrendous things, but there's a softness that you can
It's
relate
going
to.
back to what you said makes things scary, where it's you see something natural about him. You see yourself within him.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
I
so
could
it's
be that. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it's not just I mean, I won't be as good looking as Gary Oldman, but you know, but
Listen, don't sell yourself short, my friend. Anybody can look good with a crew of makeup and hair people.
that is true. I don't have the money
Mm-hmm.
yet. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
right.
I need to work up to the money. Um, but yeah, I mean, so obviously, if you're watching this, there are going to be spoilers here. So if you don't
Yeah.
want to hear any spoilers, you want to go watch the movie first, stop right here, then come back. But let's get really into the nitty gritty. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that final scene
Mm-hmm.
where Nosferatu is in the sun, and I like this way of him being vanquished than the 1922 version. Granted, I get it.
Yeah.
Technology is so much different now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sure back in 1922 I would have shit my pants watching that movie.
Sure.
But now, like to see him wither away, like in one shot, just watch it happen.
Yeah.
Like what as somebody who is in this field, what did you feel walking away from that?
So again, from a technical standpoint, I went, wow, that was gorgeous imagery. I mean, it looked like a painting, even though design wise with his scrawny little legs and that big broad chest, that was quite fun. But no, but like there is something gorgeous about the composition of those shots. So 100% I was like, wow, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But again, from a story standpoint, um, personally, again, if I would have felt more of Orlok's heart, if I would have felt more of his longing for this, not because the way that Eggers chose to approach his relationship with Lily Rose Depp is that it's a very lusting relationship and he wants what he wants and there's nothing else to it. Whereas I feel like when he withers away at the end, had you had felt his heart longing for her so desperately, that ending might have had a little bit more punch to me because I would have went, he got what he wanted, but it cost him his existence. But maybe in a way that's poetic because he knows when the sun rises, his time has come. He knew that. So in that moment, you have to put yourself in the mindset of where he's choosing to say, I've lived it. My time's come. I got what I wanted, and I'm ready to be at peace. I'm ready to die. Um, I just think that yeah, with a little bit more work on exploring him as a character, if we would have had more time spent with him, that might have hit me harder emotionally. However, gorgeous ending. I thought it was very, very well executed and beautiful.
Right. To kind of make light of it, right after the movie, I jumped to Reddit because, as
Of
every
course.
good content creator does, we have Reddit as our front page on our phone.
Right.
And I love somebody was like, he died how most of us do, which was chasing the nut.
I mean, poetic in a sense. I mean, and that is again, like I said, what you could argue is a critique of it. However, that's that's the story. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is, and there is something about the carnal, just baser human nature of that lusting that, again, like, you can relate to. Just because we didn't get the emotional, mushy gushy, longing heart stuff that we got with Gary Oldman and Dracula, if you know the subject matter and you know the context of what Nosferatu is, that stuff I think Eggers just took under his belt that you implied, which for most audiences, they probably did, but those that aren't familiar, maybe probably that's where some of those, like, making jokes about the ending kind of come from, that of like, oh well, he just wanted to get one off,
I
and
mean,
he did.
it's not wrong. I mean, he
It's
did,
not
but it
wrong.
but it there is a deeper understanding to it.
Right.
So that first shot we see, and it's very brief. I want to say it's like maybe 2 seconds in the first
Mm-hmm.
like 4 minutes of the movie. To me, that felt like a totally different film. Not in a bad way,
Mm-hmm.
but it just felt, I think it was because there's no music
Mm-hmm.
up until I think the point where they show him, and it's really just like strings. It's not even like an
Right.
orchestrated thing. It's more of like, a hit, like an impact.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw that, were you kind of like, oh, because I know you said when you heard his voice, you were like, oh, I'm in. But when you saw that, you
Mm-hmm.
were like, oh, okay, this is what we're.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, because the way that Eggers chose to introduce Orlok, he is so shadowed throughout the beginning until you do finally get that beautiful full frontal reveal of Bill
I wasn't
Skarsgård.
that impressed. I'm not gonna lie.
Listen, man, it's Bill Skarsgård, so we're gonna give him his due.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. I'm giving him his due. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, come on, man. Like, I couldn't even. I was in the back of the theater and I was like, wait, was that it?
Was that what I would think it was?
Well, I
Um,
knew it was coming. I knew there was a
yeah,
full frontal, but I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's
that's
that.
what
It
we
wasn't
got.
like a Robert Pattinson in the Lighthouse. Like that was like, yo, that was. If they would
That
have
was
released that
something.
15 years ago,
Yeah,
Team
right.
Edward girls would have their heads would have exploded.
Exploded, absolutely. No, so yeah, but no, but as far as like when you first like are just getting a sense of Warlock, what I loved that Eggers did was he chose to play into the silhouette. And again, going back to the iconography and the image and how that can make an impact. 1922 Orlok is, by all intent and purposes, a very tall, slender, slim, sleek design. Eggers went the opposite direction. He chose to buff out his upper torso, and he had the big furs and everything. So when I saw the silhouette, again, that was that first inclination of, oh, he's going somewhere different. This is not the Orlok that we're familiar with. This is not the Orlok I expected. And I trust Bill Skarsgård implicitly as an actor. I think he is one of the most criminally underrated actors of our time. And I hate that in some of his horror performances, he is sometimes treated more as a jump scare, a gag, or a prop. I know that Bill has the chops to really pull at you. But even from his silhouette and what little we do see of him in the beginning up until his reveal and his voice and everything, um, you could see that Bill was invested. He changes his posture, his whole thing about him. And I'm assuming that him and Eggers spent a lot of time talking about the silhouette because, again, when you talk about the iconography of that original film, the shadow of Orlok coming up the steps, that German expressionist stark white wall with that deep black silhouette, again, is again one of those like immediately recognizable images. And so Eggers then gave us his version of that. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. We're going somewhere completely unknown. And that's exciting to me.
So I watched a ton of interviews about this film, and Skarsgård said that I think he went through 6 hours a day of makeup. What
God
is
bless him.
for somebody who isn't you or I,
Mm-hmm.
that has even me, I'm way so more of just the inkling of understanding. But what does that look like to the layman person of like, what do you mean 6 hours? They just, I put a mask on at Party
Right.
City, which rests in peace, I guess. But
Yeah. Right.
uh, I put a mask on. It takes me 2 seconds, and then I'm ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, it is it is a living painting, you know, and that's what I think is hard sometimes to grasp because you think, oh my God, he sat for 6 hours and now he's got to go perform for a 10-hour day or whatever, and then he's got 2 hours of removal time. That's torture. It is torture. It is. I mean, any creature performer from Doug Jones to, Boris Karloff will tell you when you are the guy in the makeup and the suit, you know that you're in for the hardest job on that set. And it's true. It really is true. So what that looks like from a makeup artist standpoint, Bill probably came in, I'm guessing, crack of dawn, first thing in the morning. And first thing is get him in the chair, clean him down, wipe off all of the oils on his skin. You want to make sure that the skin is as clean as possible so that the application goes as smoothly and lasts throughout the day. And I don't know exactly the number of pieces that the makeup broke down into, but as makeup artists, we don't just do a full face piece that gets glued on and it's one piece. It's typically 7 or 8 small pieces that get patched on almost like a jigsaw puzzle because again, you don't want to lose your actor beneath it. There's a thing that Glenn Hetrick, my boss at Alchemy Studios, he talks a lot about on Face Off. If you watch the show, where he says, "I don't want to see a mask. I want to see a makeup. Don't give me a mask. If you give me a mask, anybody can do that. Anybody could sculpt a big monster and you throw it over your head and you're good to go. Show me something that is still that actor. I can feel their humanity. I can feel their soul beneath it, but yet you are transforming them." So I'm assuming, based on what I saw of the design, he probably had a back of the head appliance that was like a bald cap piece that then the wig sat over, a brow piece, a nose piece, an upper well, the upper lip I'm assuming was probably just his upper lip with the mustache glued on, cheek appliances, a chin, the neck, which is the neck piece probably came down to his chest, and that's just the days that he's clothed, where he has the overcoat and everything. And then the hands, of course, I believe Bill said that the fingertips were not glued down, they
Yeah,
were
because he said he
removable.
still had to wipe his ass. So he
Yeah.
said that they twisted on and off.
Yeah. Again, that's the brilliance of your makeup artist that knows he still has to live in this makeup. And that is the sign of a good makeup artist. Oftentimes, there are people that will design a makeup or a suit and they don't think about, oh, does this person got to get out and use the restroom? Does this person need to eat? Does this person need to? So you want to make sure that your actor is as modular and movable as possible, and comfortable while also delivering the design. So again, you have a makeup that could be anywhere from 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 15 pieces. All of those pieces need to be glued down. All of those pieces need to be blended away into the skin so that there's no seam lines. And then, of course, then you have the painting process, which could take hours and hours and hours and hours. Oftentimes, as makeup artists, what we'll try to do is we'll try to pre-paint appliances before we come to set. So all of the individual pieces will be tacked down to a board or attached to a bust of Bill's head that then the artist can sit there and do as much pre-painting work as you can. However, you can only take that pre-paint so far because once you get on set, you're gluing all these pieces, you're blending all the edges. Now you need to save like the last 20% to tie it all together. So for instance, on a day where he's full body, full frontal, completely naked vampire Orlok Bill Skarsgård, he's probably got 5 artists working on him at one time. Everybody's taking different sections of his body, and all those artists need to understand that all of their handiwork that they're doing on his foot to his head has to match each other. There needs to be a broken down list of every color used, the steps in which those colors are applied, because if you do something out of order or out of step, oh no, now his hand looks a little more pink than his head, and oh, this looks a little more this or that. So it is a science. It's a very, very methodical process. And again, you also have to take into account that even though you might have five artists working on one actor, it's still one actor. He's going to have to get up, use the restroom. He's going to have to take a phone call. He's going to have to be prepping while he's reading his script. You're also trying to then work around your actor. And sometimes, for instance, a great example is Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. Robert is a great guy. Robert has been in that makeup more times than probably any human being has ever wanted to be behind a makeup. So after the first one or two times, he starts to get comfortable with the process. And from what I understand, he's a big talker. So you're sitting there in the makeup chair and you're trying to blend this perfectly nice edge and you're trying to paint all these really crisp veins. And here's your actor reading the script, going through lines, talking to you about what they had for lunch, telling you their woes, telling you their life story. And you, as the artist, are trying to still make time and still apply and not be rude to the actor. Because, in the case of a makeup artist, aside from just doing the makeup, your job is, and I think I said this on the podcast before, was you're basically you're their therapist on set. You're with them the most time, one on one, face to face. They're gonna talk to you about stuff. So maybe the makeup could go, in 4 hours, but you're fighting against the director coming in, the producers coming in, Bill wanting to go take a shit, any number of things. It could just add up, add up, add up, add up, add up, and you want it to look beautiful every time. So you just got to give the artist the time that they need to do the work, you know.
So I need to rewatch the whole film again, but as somebody who does this, are you able to see where it goes from okay, that's Bill to
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's computer? Because I think there
Oh
were
yeah.
a few shots, like I think in the boat when the guy walks past him and
Mm-hmm.
he's walking up to the coffin. I think that's CG.
Yeah.
Um, maybe even when he bites him, like that even looks a little because there are
Some of that.
points
Yeah.
like even when like he gets out of the coffin
Mm-hmm.
and he grabs uh Thomas, like
Mm-hmm.
it looks a little too like as an editor, I'm trying to figure out how to like explain like when you and I see it, you go, oh, I know what that is, but it almost seems like
Yeah.
it's too fluid. Like the frame rates don't match up. Like the film shot at 24.98 and then this was done at like 60 FPS and you're like, oh wait,
Right.
that looks a little off.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the big toss up of just using the new technology. The digital realm, although has incredible perks. I mean, there are things that you can't do practically. You just can't. And in those moments, the digital augmentation is the clear solution. But to me, and this is again a personal thing as far as just my feeling of my craft and what we do as makeup artists. Um, I've always been of the opinion that I would much rather see something on set that's physically there being done by an actor or a puppeteer or something that may not look 100% right, but there is a different vibe that you can tell. I don't know what it is. There's something about our brains where we just know that's there, it's physical. I can almost reach out and touch it versus that feels mechanical to me. It feels digital. It feels unapproachable. There's something about it that I just can't connect with on a subconscious, baser nature level. It's the hardest thing in the world to explain because there is no real answer to it. It's just a feeling that you can tell there's been some digital fuckery done to the makeup, and it happens a lot today. It
Yeah.
happens so much today. It's almost inescapable at this point. Um, but for me, again, I would much rather watch Evil Dead. That yeah, it's crude and there's seam lines on makeups and there's things that we didn't have the ability to augment and change. But there's something about that feels more alive to me.
So that's like going back to like the Max Shrek version where even Eggers was like you could even see like the edge of the bald cap if you get like the high
Mm-hmm.
res version of the film. But
Mm-hmm.
even still, it's like we're almost willing to forego that because it does feel so real.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's too easy. I think that's the thing that people immediately notice with digital is like either, oh, I'm looking at a video game, or why couldn't they just get the makeup right to not have to do it? You start asking questions like that. At least I do as a film goer. I go, well, why did you need to do that? You didn't need to do that. That was a choice. And that choice, unfortunately, sets your creature back in the eyes of people that have a keen eye and notice those things. But also, the general viewing public probably doesn't notice it
Or care,
or
honestly.
care.
Yeah.
Right. It's
And
just
and
to
I'm not
artists.
and I'm not saying that I feel that it hinders Nosferatu because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they definitely have the notion of like I would much rather have Bill on screen than
Yeah.
Bill's computer generated image.
Right.
And I definitely feel that. I just think there are some like when he attacks Thomas, like I feel like they wanted to just
Mm-hmm.
show how supernatural he is and how quick with it he is. And
Mm-hmm.
Bill's a great actor, but he's
You
not
can't do
he's
that.
he's not a UFC fighter. Like you can't just pick
Right.
somebody up. Maybe he is. I don't know. I've seen his brothers.
Yeah, they're big guys.
They are big guys. I mean, I like
Yeah.
the notion that Bill said that Robert's collecting the Skarsgård brothers like Pokemon,
Yep.
where he's just trying to get each one for the next film.
Well, and again, I've seen so many interviews. Again, because I am genuinely like fascinated with the film and the process, and Egger's whole story of him doing a play in high school that
Yeah.
then carried it. Inspiring. It truly is one of those like great Hollywood stories that you don't hear of very often.
Yeah.
But with Bill, I was so warmed in my heart when I heard that he was like so unabashedly, unashamedly like, I have to be in this movie, damn it.
Yeah.
Like,
Because he
don't.
was casted as Thomas Holt originally.
Right, right. And just the fact that he had the um well, I maybe it's what he didn't have. He didn't have the ego to say, oh well, he didn't call me, so you know kick rocks. He doesn't see himself at that level, even though he technically could be at that level, that he so desperately wanted to be a part of it that he was like, I'm gonna write an email, I don't care, like just please
They
let
could
me
have
be a
made him
part of it.
air knock and he would have been like, this is amazing. I'm so
I'm
happy to
so
be.
happy to be right. You can sense the love and the joy that he gets from what he does, and to me, no matter what you would have done with him, because he had that love for it, he would have killed anything, you know.
I I agree. And there's a gentleman I keep forgetting his name, but it's a gentleman you've kind of worked pretty close with who was on Star Trek.
Doug
Um,
Jones.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I remember I was talking with our friend Francisco about it, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of glad that they didn't put Bill as Thomas. I'm not saying he wouldn't have done a
Mm-hmm.
great job, and I'm not saying anything
Sure.
about Doug. I just don't know as much about Doug. But to hear the amount of care and effort that Bill put into Orlok, it was like
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad he did that for it's like the thing where it's like Jesus died for your sins. It's like Bill did that for us
For us, right?
for that
Absolutely.
role.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Bill as an actor, even though he maybe didn't like think that his career was going to be about being buried in makeup and playing all these like really crazy characters, I think I saw an interview with him where he said that there is a freedom that is unlike anything else when you get to do something like that. Because especially in that makeup, like I said, he is so devoid of being there. You don't see Bill at all. That's a gift as an actor. That nobody's coming in with an expectation now because they see you, that they can literally just almost forget that it's you. There were many times that I had to remind myself, well, that's Bill Skarsgård. Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's crazy that he went so off the rails that
Yeah.
like there's no sense of him at
I
all.
didn't it took me I want to say 3/4 of the film to go, "Oh wait, that's Bill." Like cuz
Mm-hmm.
the character was just done so well that I was bought in. I was like I felt
Mm-hmm.
right there with Thomas in the castle. I was like
And
I feel what he's
everybody,
feeling. Yeah.
everybody in that cast, I felt that way about.
Yeah.
you know, from Ralph Fiennes. Like I almost like didn't recognize him. I was like, oh my God, wait, that's the dad in The Witch. What?
Well, that was because I had the opposite. My girlfriend and I were watching The Witch. She
Yeah.
goes, "He looks familiar." I'm like, "That's the Doctor Nosferatu." She's like, "Oh," I was like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, no." And but he, funny story. You probably saw that too, where they were doing a table read and Bill was like working on the voice, but he had
Mm.
to sit next to him,
Yeah.
and he was like, "That man's voice is just deep." And they
Right.
said like he was already hungover, so his voice was already. He's like, "How am I supposed to compete with that?" But I still think he, the master of commitment to the role. Like I wouldn't have
Hmm.
thought, let me work with an opera coach and do Hungarian throat singing to lower my voice an octave for this
Right.
role.
No, and there is something, it's so interesting because I can see all of the little subtleties that he's choosing in his voice. So obviously we know that like Bela Lugosi was Hungarian. He created the Dracula role on Broadway. They brought it to America, or not on Broadway. I think he was off Broadway or something, but
But they brought it
forgive
to
me.
the stage.
Yeah, they brought it to the stage, and then he got obviously offered the role. But there were even things within his voice that I found, I went, oh my God, he literally just like watched old footage of Bela Lugosi, and you could see the little like homages he was choosing to throw in there. I think it's in the first scene with Thomas when they're in the dining room when he's Thomas is professing that he needs to leave, and just when Bill first hits that, it is a black omen.
Yeah.
There was so much little subtlety where you went, okay, he's pulling from Vlad the Impaler, he's pulling from Gary Oldman's performance, he's pulling from Bela Lugosi, and as a horror film lover and an aficionado, for me, I went again, same thing. Kid did his research, did his work, and did things that I wouldn't have thought to do. I didn't expect that voice at all. So when I heard that, again, mixed with then the silhouette and the look and the design, I just went like, what trip did he have to go on in his mind to find it? That's what's so fascinating to me. Like, where did he have to go internally to make those choices? Brilliant. I mean,
Well, he
that's the
did.
sign of an actor.
Yeah, he did say it took him like 2 weeks to get out of character.
Hmm.
After filming, he was like, "Wow!" Like it was like Heath Ledger in the Joker. It's like it legitimately sticks with you
And he
when
had
you
fun. So when you have fun, it's like, I don't want to let go. Like,
yeah, it's like you grab onto it a little more, where you're like,
mm-hmm.
"No, I'm enjoying this," and then his wife is probably like, "Can you stop the Orlok,
Right.
please, for the love of
Enough.
God, stop."
I'm trying to sleep. No, it is a black. Okay, enough. Go to bed.
I'll
You
put
know,
a black omen up your ass if you don't
yeah.
shut up.
But even like when he talks about playing Pennywise, I mean, he
Right.
says that he's just there. He lives somewhere in him. And every time it's like, all right, Bill, get back in the clown makeup. It's like nothing to slip back into it. He finds something as an actor when he's building these characters that he loves, even though they're shit people or bad villains that do horrible things like eat children. You can see the relishing that he has when he gets to go there. There's some part of his brain that's a little messed up. God bless him. That he thrives on that, and that is just so exciting because I think you never really know where he's going to go. He even said in an interview, and I see everybody picking it up now, which is exciting because we've talked about it for years in my inner circle. That everybody wants to play the Joker, obviously. It's Oscar bait at this point, which is crazy that a comic book character is considered
Yeah.
an Oscar bait role.
Thanks to Heath
But
Ledger, I would say. I would say he really. I mean, it
100%.
was always a good role. There was, Jack Nicholson did
Hmm.
it justice, but I think, in my opinion, I don't think anybody ever tops Heath Ledger. And it's unfortunate because of what we just talked about, where he kept that with him, and it just, on top of already probably having underlying issues, it took him to a darker place. But we got an amazing performance out of it.
Well, actually, I want to clarify some of
Okay.
that because I have a little bit of an inside scoop that I don't hear talked about enough. So I had some mentorship time with John Caglione Jr., who designed Heath Ledger's Joker makeup and applied his makeup every day on set. And John and I talked a lot about Heath and his process and what he was like on set. And everybody had heard the whispers of, oh, this role really got to him, and he had to go to such dark places that it kind of ate away at him. And John has said unequivocally and without question, none of that is true.
Wow.
John said Heath had the most fun playing that role than he ever had on set ever. He said every day he was nothing but smiles and joy. He would bring his skateboard and skate around the set. He didn't force people to call him Joker. He wasn't off in the corner. He said, yeah, when he would have to do a scene, he'd walk away, go get in his fucking headspace, and come back and be terrifying. He said, but the minute that they called cut, he's like, it's not like that hung around. He goes,
Interesting.
that was all fabrication by the media to create some kind of a
Ah,
enticing thing. He said Heath did not go that. He goes, now, him exploring that character and keeping his journal and looking into characters like Alex DeLarge from A Clockwork Orange and looking, he says, I'm sure that there were things that brought up emotional feelings within him while he's working on that stuff that maybe he didn't want to look at but chose to so that he could go there. Um, but he said if Heath had a hard time shaking the character, it wasn't because it like did anything bad to him psychologically. It's because he said Heath had the most fun in the world getting to play that crazy, psychotic, devoid of human empathy that he just relished in it. It wasn't this heavy brooding thing. So although again for mystique and allure, I get why people hang on to that story and kind of zhizh it up for the sensationalism of it. Um, but I think because Heath tragically did die after that, and the impact that that kind of had on not just Hollywood and cinema as a whole, but his family and his children. And I think it's important to be clear that Heath was not crazy. He didn't get lost. He unfortunately was being prescribed medication to him to help him with anxiety and sleeping, and which is just that's just the unfortunate reality of working in Hollywood and working in film. You have to work crazy hours. You're put under a tremendous amount of stress, and that's the shit that aided him not playing the Joker. So from a mental health standpoint, I think it's always important to be clear about that, because
definitely.
there's a sensationalism to the insanity of, oh, we went crazy, that is not healthy to sensationalize. You know
Yeah,
what I
I'm
mean?
glad we got to clear that up. Yeah, because I've never
Mm-hmm.
heard the adverse, but also, not many people
Mm-hmm.
probably had
No,
the inside to, and
it,
also like to a lot of people, it's just not attractive.
it isn't. It's
And
not the
then, and
story
that's
they
the
want to
unfortunate
hear.
part. But that's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, what true crime is, that's what the paranormal is. It's always sensationalizing these things.
Yeah. Yeah. No, honestly, John is somebody who honestly probably would do the podcast with you. And I would highly recommend maybe trying to reach out to him, because he is a plethora of knowledge. He did a long stint on Saturday Night Live. He mentored under Dick Smith. That was his teacher. He won the Academy Award for Dick Tracy, the Emmy for Angels in America. I mean, John has an illustrious history in film and cinema, and some of the best stories that you'll ever hear that aren't the stories that are told every day. So somebody to definitely keep an eye out for and maybe try to talk to.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, well,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at some point we're going to be doing this interview again in person, but in
Yeah.
in your turf,
Yeah.
because I need to come out there and see Immortal. I know Franny and I have been planning it for ever since we interviewed you the first time. He was like, we got to
Mm-hmm.
go out over there. Um, and just because I think it'd be really cool to do a tour. Granted, I know you guys have busy and not so busy seasons, so it's always been like
Mm-hmm.
trying to time it. Um, but to kind of work on the wrap up here,
Mm-hmm.
going back to Nosferatu,
Mm-hmm.
overall, like I just want to hear a professional's rating on it. So I rated it originally 8 out of 10 when I went to bed,
Mm-hmm.
slept on it, woke up, thought about it. I was like, that's an 8.5
Mm-hmm.
out of 10. What do you personally rate Nosferatu at?
I think an eight. I think an eight is very fair. I personally, I think that's what I originally gave it after I came out of the theater watching it. I would say maybe now that I've had more time to think and analyze it, and I've only seen it once, so I mean, I'm a little bit not as nuanced on all of the details because I'm sure I've forgotten some things. Um, but maybe in hindsight, I would say a 7.5. But again, what works and what is good is impeccable. It's a scary film. It's a well-made film. In 20 years, give me my shot. That's all I would say.
Okay.
Because there are things that I would do that would separate from the preconceived established storyline that I think would have maybe pushed it over the edge for me that we didn't get because Eggers kept so true to the source material, which again, not a bad thing, just a personal preference choice.
Gotcha. So what do you personally want? Where do you think Edgar should go next? What do you think he should do? Maybe not necessarily a remake, but maybe I mean, he's already done a
Mm-hmm.
psychological drama with The Lighthouse. He's already done
Mm-hmm.
his action Michael Bay film with The Northman.
Right.
He has, I would say, arguably two, in my personal opinion, two of the best horror films under his belt
Mm-hmm.
already. The Witch, and then which surprisingly enough for me, after watching three out of his four films, I still put Nosferatu at the top.
Sure. Absolutely.
But I don't think it's by much because I put The Lighthouse and The Witch like at the same.
They're both really good
They're just
films.
good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could rate any of them lower than an 8. They're just good.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they were held to their own standards, like if I was going to say based on horror films, where would I rate The Lighthouse? Probably like a 3 because I don't think it's necessarily a horror film.
No, I think that's in general most of Eggers' films. They
Yeah,
are in a way
they're just dark.
genre defining, right?
Yeah.
It's a different. He has his own unique style, just like Ari Aster does, just like
Hmm.
some of these other auteur directors. That it's hard to kind of place them amongst their peers because the peers aren't necessarily operating on the same intellectual level that somebody like Eggers works on. Eggers,
Right.
every shot of Eggers' film, and it's what I appreciate so much about him, has so much subtext in it and so
Yeah.
much like even for instance the image forgive me, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but in The Lighthouse there's that one striking image of Willem Dafoe turning toward um Robert Pattinson, and it's that beacon of light hitting his face,
Yes.
which very, very obviously pulls to that very famous painting that philosophy talks about the shadow self and all that. That's where I say like Eggers not only knows his research but knows how to implement it in ways that people that don't know the stuff question it and will look into it and then rediscover things, or for the people that do know those things, it's like that little tip of the hat, like, hey, we're on the same page, we know what you're doing there.
Yeah.
It's very clever, and that's something that isn't being done by most directors today.
So going back to the initial question, because I definitely took us off track there.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
where do you want to see Eggers go next with directing?
Oh yeah. So to be honest with you, I genuinely would like to see him abandon a bit of his brooding nature and do something very unconventional for him, and maybe take on a slasher or
Okay.
something that's maybe more 80s based. Just because, for instance, like The Witch is a folk horror film. So that kind of fulfills that subgenre of horror. The Lighthouse has a lot of H.P. Lovecraft influence to
Yeah,
it
I would call it a drama too, more so than
than
a
a
horror.
horror. Right. So he's now kind of tackled that cosmic horror, but yet also the drama horror. And then you have Nosferatu, which obviously is vampirism and
Gothic.
the
Yeah.
gothic horror, right? So now it's like, what haven't we seen? Why haven't seen him do a balls to the wall, Peter Jackson, Dead Alive kind of horror movie? Like, go crazy, embrace the practical effects, and give us something that's just weird. I like there's elements of that in The Lighthouse that's just bizarre and weird, and I liked that. let's see more of that sensibility of him that I think isn't explored and maybe is dangerous, but like he's at a place I think as a director where like even if commercially it's a flop, I think it might be the thing that just reignites a new spark in him to pull us out of the same kind of vibe that a lot of his films kind of fall into, that very dark, brooding, heavy film.
Definitely. I honestly, I don't know where I'd want him to go. I remember somebody was like, I wonder what he would do on a Marvel film. And I was like, don't, no,
No.
don't. I feel like, not saying Marvel films are bad, but I almost feel like, this is going to sound pretentious, but like his films are almost a little too intellectual for him to go then do a Marvel
Mm-hmm.
film. I feel like you need like a James Gunn or even like a Peter Jackson
Right.
or yeah, Favreau, all those guys. That those kind of films. I think w- I think the really good thing about Eggers is it's all of his films are thought provoking.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why you look up, The Lighthouse, and then you go The Lighthouse Explained. There's 800 Reddit posts going, "This is what I think,"
Right.
and there's no clear cut answer. Even with Nosferatu,
Mm-mm.
there were people that still, and I get it, but there were a lot of people that were like, "I don't get the ending," and I think that's what makes Eggers so good, amongst many other things.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that The Lighthouse, and granted, obviously, The Lighthouse was shot damn near, I think almost. I know Nosferatu was shot on 35 mil.
Yeah.
I don't remember what The Lighthouse was shot on, but it was definitely like like a 4:3 aspect ratio.
Yeah.
But I almost, and then even The Witch, because like The Witch was like almost independent, correct, before it was released.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
almost want to see that because Nosferatu was very produced. It looked
mm-hmm.
very good. So I think that's why we saw some CGs because he was like, well, now I have the budget. I guess I can kind of get away with some of those things. Like the shadow shot over the city, really cool. Wouldn't have happened in The Witch though.
No.
He would have done something different. And I think I want more of that again.
Well, that's the beauty of limitation. And I think that oftentimes people fear limitation because, oh, I have all these grandiose ideas and these big images in my head. When you are put with your back against the wall and you don't have a lot of money and you're trying to find a way to achieve the image that you're trying to produce that's still effective, it forces your creativity to kick into maximum overdrive. And I feel like that's when you learn what's the word? You learn some form of like
Almost like resourcefulness.
well resourcefulness, but also like just like I'm blanking on the term I want to use, but like you learn when to stop. You know, when you have all
Mm,
the money and you can do everything, you do everything. There's no limit now, and that's when I think things start to find this like weird ground where they don't have as much emotional resonance because it's almost too fantastical that you've lost the sense of reality.
it's more so look what I can do, not let me show
Right.
you how, let me make you feel something.
Right. Right. Just show me that you understand what's important behind the scene, not why it's a flashy scene. It's something that right now my creative team is struggling with because a little scoop and tidbit, not to turn this into
No, we're
my
for sure
thing,
gonna get there. We're definitely gonna get there too. So
but we're in the process of hopefully going to make our first feature this year. Odd Compelling Tales has finally picked up enough steam, and we've got a little bit of help in finding some funding that we're trying to adapt Odd Compelling Tales, the show, into a feature film that we can then kickstart the series off with.
it's gonna be
And
amazing, by the way.
thank you. And I think that it's a really fun concept that we have and a really great script that we have. But we were last night we had like a 4 hour long, kind of breakdown of the script with our director and what can we do, what can't we do, what are the limitations. And every time that we sat there and kind of went, well, we only have X amount of money. How in God's name are we going to achieve this thing that we want to do? We were finding that we were pulling back to old school filmmaking techniques that aren't used as much anymore to go, oh, well, yeah, we don't have the budget to shoot this on IMAX and get the scope of a whole town, but maybe we could do stuff with miniatures, and maybe we could do stuff with puppetry and old school things that like aren't used as much today. And there's something I think that is exciting about that, as well as invigorating, because you are no longer being held to the standard of what people expect from a blockbuster film today. You have the freedom to go, no, this is an art house little indie film, and we're going to accept that that's what we are and embrace it, and not try to fight against it and try to do things that we can't achieve, even though they're a cool idea, and it keeps it more grounded. It keeps it a little more limited. But I think at the end of the day, the product that we're going to get by the end of the film is going to be really exciting. And I think that that's what all first-time filmmakers have on their first film. That's why The Witch stands the test of time. Is, in my opinion, it's his best film, because he didn't have much, but he made what he had the maximum that it could possibly be. And
I
he
agree.
and he leaned into your imagination to fill in the blanks, and that's when shit's really scary.
I agree, and I think he still kind of did that with Nosferatu. I think
Mm-hmm.
I would say, because it does kind of sound like I'm like, Nosferatu feels lesser because it had a budget. No, I just think it allowed him
Mm-hmm.
to do more with his mind that maybe he couldn't have done with The Witch or even The Lighthouse. Like, but I think
Mm-hmm.
The Lighthouse would not have hit the same, and it probably did. I think it did have a pretty decent budget. I mean, they got Willem
Yeah,
Dafoe and Robert Pattinson in the same movie. Granted,
yeah,
that's why there's only two actors. They blew all the budget on them too, but I
yeah.
don't think that movie would have done as well if it had the budget of Nosferatu and the
Mm-hmm.
production value of Nosferatu. But I also feel like in the spirit of Nosferatu, he's a very like grander than life figure,
It
and so
needed to be.
it needed to be that, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the witch is very, you hear it from
Isolated.
your neighbor, you hear it from somebody else in the town, and
Mm-hmm.
then it gets passed on for generations. So you're still not quite sure, but you're not thinking some grandiose witch thing. You're thinking some little hut out in the middle of the woods.
Right, right. It's just, again, it's the subgenres of horror. Folk horror is notoriously isolated and tight and claustrophobic feeling. Gothic horror, it embraces its bombastic nature, and
Yeah,
you could see that Eggers just went, I finally got the money to do this thing to its full scale. I'm gonna make this an epic, and he did.
yeah,
It is an epic film. It's gorgeous. It feels like you're watching Lord of the Rings. It's like, oh, this is what a director with all of his resource can do with an IP that is demanding of spectacle.
yeah.
And he absolutely delivered.
So before we fully wrap up, we are running out of time here a little bit, but
Mhm.
what are three things somebody should take away from this movie? And if they haven't seen it, maybe three reasons why they should go see it.
Well, the three reasons why you should go see it is, a uh, theater experience is important. Go into a theater with people and have a communal experience that you're not going to get sitting watching it on your laptop. Number one, go for that reason. Number two, I think, aside from the gorgeous images that will never look better than being projected on a massive screen, the performances, the sound design, the music, you want to hear that in its full glory. You will not get the same viewing experience at your home theater, or in your bedroom watching on a laptop. You're just not going to get that experience. So the scope and the spectacle of the film demands you to do it. And then again, of course, just you will see some of the best performances probably of the year in that film. It is top to bottom one of the most well acted films, I think, in recent history. You have some of the most heavy hitting people doing top of the line work. That's just in and of itself worth going to see. To piggyback off of the prior question though, which was, you said three reasons.
Or three
What?
things you took away from it, like
Three
three
things I took
things.
away from it.
Yeah,
Um, I took away from it that, a, these iconic characters that maybe otherwise could be lost to time will never be lost, because regardless if you love the film, hate the film, are indifferent about the film or whatever, the fact that we have Nosferatu, The Wolfman coming, Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, these, and I think it's known. Hopefully, this isn't going to get me in trouble.
We can come back and scrub it if it isn't out yet.
The creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, okay.
James Wan is taking that over, and they're in production right now for it. I know friends that are working on it. I don't know what the vibe of the film is or what they're doing with it, but the fact that again, like these universal classic iconic monsters still can hold a box office. Wow. That's inspiring. That tells me that these characters will never be lost to time, and that's a beautiful thing. So there's that. The second thing I would say would be that when you have a director who is a master, let them do their thing, because that's proof in the pudding that like just let him do his thing. Trust that these artists and these directors know how to deliver a beautiful product. Because, like I said, for what little qualms I have about the film, they're very superficial. They're very superficial. It is a technical, damn near perfect film. So, you know, that there. And third, when you have people that come together with the same passion for what they're doing, you can't help but make a beautiful film. Like I said, the fact that you could tell Willem Dafoe wanted to be there, Bill
Hmm.
Skarsgård desperately wanted to be there, and then these actors that obviously Eggers has worked with time and time again that keep coming back. There's obviously something there that creates magic, and it gives me hope that that we haven't lost that, even though Hollywood is kind of in a weird place right now in the business side of things. That magic can still be made when you have the right people coming together to bring a vision to life.
Well, Santino, I want to say thank you for this. Before we go, what do you have currently in the works? You kind of alluded already to you're
Mm-hmm.
working potentially on a feature this year,
Mm-hmm.
which would be amazing. What else you got going on? Where can people find some of your work if they want to go? I want to see what Santino's has done.
Well, right now it's still pretty much the same socials. Instagram is where I'm the most active, so you can find me on my personal page, SFFX Studios, or of course our production company page, Spellcast Pictures. There's a lot of
These
new
guys,
exciting
these guys.
the guys you're wearing on your shirt right there, or on your hoodie, which I appreciate the rep. Um, I would say follow us on there because this year there is something about. It's hard to explain. I don't want to be too overly flowery in case things do fall apart, but there's an energy right now that's happening. There's a little bit of momentum that's building that I don't really know what to expect in this next year. I just know that whatever it is, it's different, it's exciting, and I just hope that people want to follow along on the process. So, yeah, follow me on Instagram and stay tuned for a lot of really weird, wacky, wonderful, exciting things coming in the new year that we're very excited about.